All set. You were telling me a second ago about the that guy who didn't show up.
Oh, yeah, he just didn't get to the racetrack on time.
So did the boys? What did the boys want to do about it?
Well, that was up to the unit manager. The boys had nothing to do with it.
So you were just there to film, were you?
That's what I thought when I went out there that morning. But I was there, so what the heck? Look, I'm used to working with mics in all places of all kinds and under practically all conditions. You didn't see that display of mics in the shop. I had about 8 or 9 of them, different kinds we've used over the years.
So you were they wanted to wait for the other guy to arrive.
Well, they assumed they didn't have anybody that could handle that mic. They didn't know they didn't have to wait. I asked them what they were waiting for, what was the holdup. They said they didn't have anybody on the mic. I said, well, give me the program, I'll do it. They said, you? I said, yeah, I've been doing it all my life. Give me the dang thing. And from then on, I was announcer.
You were familiar with the show, I guess.
It wouldn't have been the same thing if I hadn't been. They give me a program, you have a list of the different stunts, what they're doing, and what one follows which one, and that's all you need. I announced air shows without ever flying a plane.
Really?
Well, sure. You can tell by the sound whether they're doing a barrel roll or a loop or what.
And you were familiar with their maneuvers?
Yeah. I did a lot of air shows before I ever owned an airplane.
Could you tell me a bit about the national air races?
Well, I was there in 1935 and 1936. And we were the main attraction at night. When the air races were over, we took over. We put on a show right in front of the grandstand, which at that time was half a mile long. We had 98 big speakers on that. And the crowd enjoyed that as much as they did the airplanes, I think.
I just want to check and make sure you haven't clicked off the mic on me. Oh, it's still on. There's a button on there for the microphone.
Oh.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. This was in where?
This was at the old airport at Cleveland. Cleveland Airport in 1935.
Which show was this?
National Air Races.
And which stunt show?
That was Jimmy Lynch on the field with cars. But there were parts of the air show I wound up announcing too. Like a guy named Hal Johnson had a Ford tri-motor, and he would do a loop with that. He'd take off at 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, and it took him till noon to get altitude, just flying back and forth over the airport, because he had underpowered engines in it. There were supposed to be 600 apiece or something, and his were only 4. he didn't have much power. He had the plane stripped of all the seats and everything, but he would get up to maybe 7,000 feet, and then he would nose it over and come down in a dive, and then he'd pull it up to do the loop. And that plane would be working so hard, the props would practically stop. You could see them almost stop, although the engines were still running. Just he went over the top of the loop and then down the other side. And there was Roscoe Turner that flew in the Thompson race. He always put on a demonstration, and I'd announce it. Frank Frakes was up there with a 19.9 Curtis Pusher, and I did his show. A couple of others I can't remember now. I think one was an autogyro. There was a woman named Jacqueline Cochran, used to fly that thing. That was half airplane, half helicopter.
Had a prop on the top?
Prop on the front. Didn't have one on top.
What made it like a helicopter?
Well, it would climb so steeply and come down at a steep angle. It had short wings and a fat body and a big tail and a big engine.
There were that show at the National Air Races. That was no doubt the usual, the 1 hour show. Is that right?
Well, the air races ran all day.
But this car show at the end?
We would fill about an hour and 15 minutes in the evening.
And, would it be dark by then?
Starting to get dark. We had floodlights as big as wash tubs. We had plenty of light.
I read that there were newsreels made of that.
Oh, yeah.
Were there a lot of them?
Yeah, there was a guy out of Cincinnati had an old-fashioned camera that you cranked, and he'd show up about every other show. The thing looked like a box with a big crank. He'd go this way. Didn't have any motor.
Do you remember his name?
No, it was too long ago.
Was he there just on his own?
Well, I think he was freelancing, yeah.
I guess most of those guys were.
Yeah, the ones that were not would have some kind of decal or logo on their stuff. Like Pathé always had a rooster.
Yeah. Do you think, what do you think would have happened to those newsreels? Would I be able to find any of them?
Oh, somebody might have some in a vault somewhere. I think if Fox Movie Tone is still in business, they might have something. Or Pathé.
Do you remember a guy named Toomey?
Who?
A guy named Toomey?
Buddy Toomey.
Yeah.
He was with us.
With Lynch?
Toomey. Buddy.
Mm-hmm.
He committed suicide.
In a car?
No. After the show was canceled and everything. Year or two. A couple of them did. Whitey Reese did also.
Why do you think that was?
Well, Whitey was always sort of oddball. He worried about everything. He shot himself with an Army 45.
Were they both mechanics?
And drivers.
I read that Buddy jumped over a train
Possible.
in 1940 or something, a moving
Everybody was doing that sort of thing in Florida.
in Florida?
Yeah. Everything is flat in Florida. It was easy to set up.
What kind of guys were working down there?
Well, the same bunch. If the show season was over up north, they'd go down south.
To try and extend
A
the...
couple of years we put on free shows right on the street for Goodrich and Fire Chief Gasoline, Plymouth Cars. I used to park out in the middle of the street. We'd set up one ramp, and I would park down the street from the ramp, headed up the street, and have the speakers pointed forward to the car, so the sound would go down the street. And if when they went over the ramp, if I saw a brake hose come off or something, I'd flash my lights, and then instead of trying to stop, they would hit me. That was the way they stopped the car, to keep it out of the crowd. Once in a great while, they'd pull the brake hose off.
This is for a street show?
Yeah, they're doing them right on the street. People stand right on the curb. Today, the insurance company would lay an egg.
I guess.
Down in Clearwater, Florida, there were gray pelicans on one side of the street and people on the other. And those pelicans, must have been 50 of them, their heads would all turn together like they were on the same shaft when the car went by. All their heads would turn as they watched it. They were funny.
I don't think I've seen a gray pelican. Oh,
Yeah,
I think
they
it's a
say.
flamingo.
A very odd bird is a pelican. His beak will hold more than his belly can. And it goes on from there.
Is that the beginning of a poem?
Yeah. Now, what else you want to know?
Geez, I think I'm just about all run out of questions. We've covered a lot of stuff.
You don't have much on the board wall.
I got a little bit on that. Well, you've given me the description of the story about the green lumber.
Well, that would apply to the motorcycle wall. The car wall was bigger.
Oh yeah, okay. So, what was the main difference?
Well, the car wall would be higher, because he'd go up a ramp, he'd actually jump through the wall. The bottom of the car would be 4 feet above ground. And they had the gasoline and oil mixture on it, burning, and he would jump right through the middle of the wall. The deal was you had a big enough wall and a lot of flame, and the car, when it went through there, would make enough vacuum, would make enough vacuum that the fire would follow the car, be sucked along with it. You had a tongue of fire maybe 50 feet long. Very spectacular.
Were there any other stunts where they used fire, except besides the slide?
Not really.
Or dynamite?
No, we used dynamite only for Frank Frakes on that house that he flew into.
I don't have anything about JoJo on tape.
Well, JoJo was a clown. He had all kinds of little routines he'd go through, and he'd work with a horse car and kill time. And he would come in with one of the old beat-up crash cars that were scheduled to be demolished in the head-on crash, and he'd run over a plank laying flat on the ground as if he were doing a ramp.
He was, what was it about the red paint? Something about...
Oh, he was shy of one finger on his left hand. And he would get rubber gloves and fill that first finger up with red paint, put a rubber band around the base of it. He could put the glove on without getting any paint on himself. And then he would put a white canvas work glove over that hand. Then he could take the hatchet, chop that